I am 28 years old and 2 months ago, I quit my 9-to-5 corporate job to start living my dream life. But to tell you the story of how I got here, I have to go back in time to 2019. It's May 2019 and I just graduated from F.I.T with a bachelor's degree in business, specifically production management. Life was good. I had just graduated college, I got my first job, I moved out of my parents' house, I was rooming with 2 friends in the city. I was living a pretty normal 20-something-year-old life. My first job out of college, like most jobs in the fashion industry, did not pay me well. I was getting paid, I think, like $21 an hour, and with that money, I was paying my rent, which at that time was actually not that bad. I think I was paying like $900, and I quickly realized that living on my own meant I needed more money. So in December of 2019, I quit that job right before going on a trip to Mexico. And I know that sounds risky, but at that time, finding a job was so easy. I literally went to Mexico with my family, spent the New Year's there, came back with an interview already lined up, and then later that week, I had a job. It was so easy back then. It is now 2020, and we all know what happened in 2020. I was 2 months into my new job when the pandemic hit and everything changed. I was let go from my job. At that time, I was working at J.Crew as a trim assistant. I had to go back home to live with my family, and I remember being told it would be like a 2-week thing. We all know it was not a 2-week thing. J.Crew in 2020 was the last time I ever stepped foot into an office. And I mean, like, literally never went back to a corporate office until recently. More on that. But that was the last time I had to play the corporate game, talk the corporate language, get ready for work and commute. Like, that was a long time ago. That was over 5 years ago. And so while I'm living at home with my parents during this pandemic, I decided to launch my own small business. It's a jewelry brand. I had so much fun doing the launch, but I felt like I shouldn't let go of my degree that I worked so hard for, so I went back to work. So by December of 2020, I went back to work. I got a job at Victoria's Secret as an associate product developer, and it was fully remote. And by 2021, I moved back to the city. I was still working at Victoria's Secret during this time, and it was still remote, but I was starting to feel unhappy with the work and the pay. So I started looking for a new job, and I found a new job. I told you, back then, finding a job was easy. So in 2022, I start my new job at Thinx as a senior product developer. I also meet my boyfriend, now fiance, Jordy, and life was good again. Oh, and that job was also fully remote. By 2023, I start making some money on social media through TikTok, through affiliate links, and through my dog, Winston. So I go and I open up a LLC. It's called Pina Studios LLC, and that's it. I never touched her again. But then, slowly but surely, that feeling of being unhappy with my job starts to creep up again, and I want to act on it so bad. But at this point, I know that the job market is not what it used to be. I have so many friends who were laid off, who are struggling to find a job, so it's a little bit more scary to be impulsive knowing that the job market is not what it used to be. But you know what they say, ask and you shall receive. I was laid off from Thinx in May of 2024. They had this big company layoff, it was a whole thing, and I was a part of that. So before I could even act on my own intrusive thoughts, the universe said, "You're free. Be gone." With being laid off, I received a severance package of 3-month pay. So all of a sudden, I went from having a job that paid me well, at that time I was making around 88K, to now not having a job and essentially only having 3 months worth of salary pay. I felt like I had been set up to go after my dream life of being a full-time content creator, being a social media manager, and eventually launch my own digital marketing agency. However, that is not what happened. I felt like because I had my degree in a certain field, I had to stick with it until I died. I felt like the only way I could be successful was if I became a leader in this industry. And so even though I was posting content like never before that time that I was unemployed, I never actually believed that it could become my main source of income. So behind the scenes, I was still applying to jobs, I was networking, I was DMing people on LinkedIn, trying to get some way into a new job. And I wasn't getting anything. I mean, I applied to so many jobs and no one was getting back to me. I think out of like 50 jobs that I applied, or maybe even 100, I got a call back from like 5 people. And then out of those 5, 2 of those interviews I made to the last round and I didn't get the job. And looking back at it now, it's almost as if the universe was literally telling me to not go down this road. This was not the path for me, and I was fighting that. I was fighting it so hard. And I just remember thinking like, I have to go back to work. Like, this is the only way I know that I will be financially okay, and it's by getting a 9-to-5 job. And again, ask and you shall receive, because I ended up getting a job in December of 2024, and it was the first time that I had to go back to a corporate office, and oh my god, it was like a cultural shock. I don't know how else to describe this feeling. It was like, I was like, what the fuck? So now, all of a sudden, I go from being fully remote for 4 years to being technically unemployed for the entire spring and summer, to now having to go back into an office and work a job in an industry that I no longer loved. By the way, the job that I got was at Tommy Hilfiger, and it's funny how the universe works. I remember in college, I applied to their internship program, and then later, after college, I was always applying to any open position at Tommy Hilfiger, and I never heard back. Did not get the internship, did not get any interviews. Fast forward to last year, I finally got the job. I was like, wow, finally I'm gonna get to work at Tommy Hilfiger. But I realized that the fashion industry was no longer serving me the way that it used to. And not to sound dramatic, but I feel like my life ended. But like, actually, like, I went from having remote jobs to being unemployed and getting a taste of what life should feel like, and then just letting all that go. And Jordy could see this change in me, and he looked me in the eye and he was like, quit your job. And I was like, are you serious right now? Because I will literally quit tomorrow. And he was like, why are you spending your time doing something you don't love to do when you can be doing something that I know you're good at and you should be doing? And I was like, you're right. You are so right. And honestly, I'm just so happy that he pushed me and he believed in me to take this next step, because without him and without his support, I think I would still be working my 9-to-5. So what gave me the confidence to finally hit send on my 2-week notice? Well, apart from Jordy's words of encouragement, I also did have a very small income from social media coming in. And that social media money would have been enough, except I'm getting married this summer and throwing a wedding is not cheap. I also racked up a good amount of credit card debt from just being unemployed, so I had to pay off my debt pretty quick. And also, I live in New York City. So I knew that after putting in my 2 weeks, I was going to have to hustle, like literally work, work, work. What's that Kim Kardashian quote where she's like, nobody wants to work these days. I want to work these days. On me. So on January 13th, I sent my 2-week notice and I had instant regret. Oh my goodness, that was the scariest thing I've ever done. I swear to you, if I could have ran after that email and caught it before it was delivered, I would have. That's how much regret I had after I sent that email. But luckily, a few days before that, I listened to this podcast right here, How to Find Your Purpose and Design the Life You Want, by the beautiful Mel Robbins and Dr. Martha Beck. And in the podcast, Dr. Martha Beck says, stuckness always means you're about to be transformed. She then asks Mel Robbins about her scariest thought when fear takes over. And Mel says, I love how I say Mel as if I know her, Mel Robbins. And then Mel Robbins says, you're about to do something stupid. But then Dr. Martha Beck explains that the opposite of your most painful thought is your next step toward awakening. So, ready? Okay. She then takes what Mel Robbins said, I'm about to do something stupid, and transforms that into, you're about to do something brilliant. And I don't know why this specific part of the podcast stuck with me, but I'm happy that it did, because when I quit my job, I thought, this is stupid. This is dumb. Why did I quit my job? I remembered what they said in the podcast and transforming those negative thoughts into positive thoughts. And so I took that and I said, this is the best choice I've ever made. Really good things are about to happen to me. It is now March 2025. My last day working my 9-to-5 job was January 31st. And since then, I have really pushed myself to post on social media, but actually post with a purpose. And I've been putting out into the universe that I'm a social media manager and a content creator. I'm literally manifesting the life that I want by talking about it. But that does not mean that I'm not putting in the work behind the scenes. I am putting in the work. I am much more intentional with what I'm doing now. I'm doing the research, I'm applying what I learned into what I'm doing, and I am seeing the results. At the end of February, I got this really cool opportunity to work on this project for a really good cause as their web content consultant. And also, this project is fully remote. I am literally living my dream life. And for me, my dream life is as simple as just having my mornings with my fiance, walking Winston in the middle of the day, going on a run at like 2 p.m. if I want to. Basically just doing what I want to do when I want to do it. And it's almost as if I had to go back to a 9-to-5 to realize that that life is not for me anymore. And that lit a fire in me to change my life. And although I feel like I'm going in the right direction, I still have 2 big goals for the year. My first goal is to revisit Pina Studios LLC. Yeah, remember her? And turning that into a real business. And then my other goal is to fall in love again with my small business, Alapina. The word of the year for me this year is hustle. Hustle, baby. So this year I'll be hustling for both my personal and financial goals. I have big dreams and I am determined to accomplish them. So if you're interested in following the journey and growing together, then subscribe to my channel, follow me on all the socials, and I'll see you next week for a brand new video. Peace.